Hey, welcome back. Today is Friday, the 11th of August, 2023, here in the Gilbertson Aero Factory. It is the same time as we started yesterday, but it is 10 degrees cooler in here than it was at the same time yesterday. Late in the afternoon, I got the larger, much more powerful portable AC unit. It's running over here. It's much more comfortable in here right now. So that's good. We're happy. I'll put a link to what I got down in the description in case you're considering doing something similar in your hell of a workshop in the middle of summer. Today, we're going to see how far we can get with construction of the leading edges. Most of the prep is done. Finished up almost all of the rib prep yesterday. I let the primer dry overnight. So today I'll go ahead and dimple the ribs and that will be all ready. The first thing I'm going to do after that is get into installing the access plate for the stall warner, which, if you recall, I'm not actually putting in this airplane, but I need to put that access plate on the left wing skin. Stay tuned for that portion of the video because I have a really important amateur tip when it comes to dimpling nut plates. So without any more of the blah blah, let's just build an airplane.
Here we go. This is episode 90 and part 4, I think, of leading edge construction. Boy, do I love having these things on wheels. I moved everything up to this part of the shop so that I could kind of be in line with the fan blowing air off of that AC. This would be the coolest part of the shop to work in. So continuing on with prep, the primer has had time to cure on these, so I'm dimpling all of the things that need to be dimpled because I'm going to dimple all of these ribs. I'm going to dimple the splice plate or splice joint, and then I'm going to go ahead and dimple all of the main skin ribs, all of the main ribs rather, on the top side where the top skins are going to mount. And then I did go ahead and dimple the rear spar, most of the rear spar on one wing, and decided not to do it on the second one because there are some spots that are there that are just kind of awkward that I'll probably not use the squeezer to dimple. I might use like the close quarters tool that you use with a rivet puller to get some of those, just to avoid getting any little twist or bend kind of locally around those holes on the rear spar. So there was a lot of work that got done today. It's a big, big, big difference to have this shop warm nonetheless, but still 10 degrees cooler. It did heat up throughout the day as it heated up outside, but I was consistently, 14 or 15 degrees cooler than the outside air temperature. So definitely doable. I'll probably, okay. So you see that there's a little time jump here. The camera died again because of the heat. So I moved it to this lower position and the fan in the room is blowing right behind the back of the camera. So no more overheating problems on the GoPro. But this is still more of the same. Dimpling, and getting to work on the access plate and that splice joint. Coming up here in a couple minutes, we'll get into the little special that I do on how to get around dimpling the nut plates. And by the way, I say in my thing that you can't dimple the nut plates without deforming them. You can. You actually can dimple the nut plates without deforming them, but in order to do so, you'll have to take one of your beautiful, perfectly built dimple dies and shave one side off of it and make it really thin on one side. So if you want to buy an extra set of dimple dies for that purpose, knock yourself out. But there's a good way around it, and that's what we'll get into here in a few minutes. But here you see me running down, and I guess it's worth reiterating because it's been a while. The way that these wing stands are constructed and the way that the wings are hung on them is such that the outboard portion where I am and toward the garage door, those are the tops of the wings. because while they're on the wing stands, all the work that you're going to do, most of the work you're going to do is going to be about the tops of the wings. The inboard portion, I left enough room there that you can walk through and do work, but no skins will be riveted on the bottom portion, which are the inboard portions as you're looking at it right here. The bottom skins will be the very last to go on, and at that point, these wing stands will be long gone, and the wings will be living in a cradle that can roll around, and the cradle is built in such a way that the lower portion, the bottom faces of the wings would be outboard, where you can work on them, do all the plumbing for the pedostatic, the wiring, landing lights, whatever else you're going to put out there, get all that done. And when you're happy with it, then you can go ahead and rivet on the bottom skins. So I just decided to get ahead of the game. I mean, the next step after I finish this, this leading edge construction will be to get into riveting on the top skins. So why not go ahead and do all those dimples on the ribs, because I'm set up for it right now. Yeah, I'm not really sure how this is going to turn out once it's rendered. I changed a frame rate setting here because on the previous video I got that kind of rolling shutter where you have the kind of gray dark bars kind of floating up and down the screen. But this one looks kind of herky-jerky, so I'm very curious how this experimentation is going to turn out. Enough of that rambling here. I'm working on that access plate, and here in just a moment, we'll get into the special about how to go about doing this.
Okay, so I told you I'd do a little amateur tip special on working with nut plates. This is the mounting bracket for the access panel that's going to go on the left wing skin. So you can see that it's dimpled all the way around. This is the inside. This is going to mount inside the skin, and then outside of the skin will be the access cover, and that's going to be screwed on through all these little holes for the nut plates right here. A problem is that the instructions tell you to dimple these holes, this one and this one, so that it can accept a flush rivet, because it's got to fit behind this. So you need to dimple these holes to use a flush rivet, and then the nut plate itself, this needs to be dimpled to accept the dimple on this. The problem is you can't really dimple this without deforming it. If you look at the dimple die, when you put this thing in here and go to close it, the female die will interfere with the screw hole, that little flare part right there, and it will bend this and deform it. So the amateur tip is, the solution is, and you can see right here where I've already done it on these two holes, is just to take your Avery deburring tool, and results may vary, depends on how much pressure you put to get that countersink. Use Avery deburring tool, and then instead of using the regular AN426 rivets, you use these NAS 1097 rivets, or what we call OOPS rivets, that have a really shallow countersink. And those will fit nice and flush. And you don't have to worry about this being super sturdy or rigid. The whole point of these things, the whole point of these rivets here, is just to keep the nut plate from twisting. So that's your amateur tip. Don't dimple these holes. Just use your Avery deburring tool. Give it a handful of twists to give it a nice little countersink. And that'll do the trick for mounting the nut plates. There you go.
So there you have it. That's a pretty handy trick for dealing with these nut plates. And again, these nut plates are not structural. or the rivets that hold them. These are not structural. The purpose of these rivets on the nut plates is simply to keep the nut plate from spinning when you screw something into it. So this is a pretty handy solution. You see me working my way around. What I found for me, at least with the amount of pressure that I use, is it's 15 turns of the handle to get it the right countersink for this particular size rivet that I'm using. So not only am I doing it here, and what you see me doing here is I got it all done. I'm going to load up all of the nut plates on there with one cleco each and go around and get those all riveted on. But then later you'll see me with the splice joint, that strip that connects the leading edge to the fuel tank. I'll do the same thing because that thing is loaded up with a bunch of nut plates, because remember, the fuel tank is not riveted to the wing. It is screwed to the wing all over the place, whole bunches of screws. So I made a mistake when I was doing this, not an unrecoverable mistake, but as we just discussed, I did not dimple the rivet holes for the nut plates. Instead, I machine countersunk them. And then I finished that, and then I loaded up all of the nut plates on there, got all the nut plates riveted on, and afterwards I realized that I still needed to actually rivet the screw, or rather dimple the screw hole. It's a number 6 screw, and I needed to rivet the screw hole, and I didn't do that. So off camera to the left here, when you see me disappear, or if you see me grab a hammer, I basically manually made those dimples on the on that bracket once the nut plates were already riveted in place. And the only reason you can really get away with this is because those nut plates are steel. So when you apply the male die on a ram to the back of it and tap it a couple times with a hammer, it will set that dimple without deforming that nut plate, because it's direct, straight up and down. Riveting that access plate holder, whatever you want to call it, onto the skin, and you'd think it would be easy enough to do to squeeze these rivets, but still I ended up with one that I just didn't like, and because I suppose I went ahead and not only redid it, but did it again a second time until I was satisfied. It was just sort of an awkward angle, and both of the first times that I set that rivet, the flush head on the outside of the skin was not quite flush. So got that done, and okay, here we get to work on the splice plate. Lots of what I'm doing in there, running into the house, I've got the plans laid out on the kitchen table, and I'm going to check the rivet plan and make sure that I'm thinking correctly about the way that I go about this. So similar to the access plate, mounting plate thing. For the nut plates on the splice joint, I countersunk the rivet holes for the nut plates. And then this time, though, I did, in fact, remember to go around and dimple it number 6 all the way around. And then you have to also dimple all the rivet holes because this is riveted to the leading edge skin with a AN 426. It's a number 40 or whatever you want to call it, a 3/32. But so I got all of that done. I know that I said at the beginning of this that I got nearly all of the prep work done, but yeah, it still takes a bit of time to get all that stuff done. It's a lot of holes that all need to be touched and something done to them before you can finally get into it. But yeah, just the fact that I could actually breathe in this shop today wasn't completely overtaken by the heat. That made a big difference. That AC is pulling a ton of water out of the air. I've got the drain tube going into a 5-gallon bucket, whatever the big blue bucket is from Lowe's. But by the end of the day, that was 3/4 full. So, okay, finally, we're getting the leading edge into the cradle and clecoing the skins or the ribs in place, clecoing the assembly together. The instructions are pretty specific about what to do next. So you get it all clecoed together, and I'm going to go ahead and you'll see me carry this away and bring the other one over. While I'm in the mode of putting these things together and clecoing, even though I only have one cradle, I might as well go ahead and get both of them prepared for riveting. But once you have it all riveted together and you're satisfied that everything is square and the way that it's supposed to be, you rivet the aftmost rivet holes on each rib. And so aftmost would be, as you're looking at it right now, would be the top, like towards the ceiling. The very last rivet to, like rib to skin rivet. Squeeze those rivets so that it's all squared up and tight, and then you'll go in and finish the riveting, and all the rest would be bucked rivets. So here's what I did today. I got both of these, after all of that other work is done, I got both of these put together, clecoed together, and then went ahead on both of these as well and did those first rivets, the aftmost rivets on every single rib, so that tomorrow, and so I guess I spoiled it how far I got done today. That's what I got through with today, which means that tomorrow both of these leading edges are ready for riveting, like bucking rivets, all of the rivets. They are almost all AN 426 3-3.5 rivets, except for the ones on the inboard rib where that splice joint is. Those per the plans, those are AN 426 3-4. They seem a little bit small, but when you put a 4.5 in there, those are definitely too big. And reading section 5 of the manual, it tells you that there will be times when it seems like the rivet called out is a little bit smaller than what you would expect it to be, but it's not a misprint. So we'll go with it. They're not dreadfully small. It's just, not. It seems like it should be right in the middle, like in 426 3-4.25. So that's what I'm doing here, finishing it up. I probably could have stayed a couple of more hours and done all of the riveting, but it always takes longer than I think that it would to do that. And as the day went on, it was getting warmer in there. It never got above 90, which was significantly cooler than it has been, but I could tell that I wasn't, I don't know. I think that I would have been impatient at that point if I started riveting, and I sure wouldn't want to be impatient when I'm bucking rivets on a beautiful, shiny leading edge. So that wraps it up for episode 90. It's a little bit longer than usual. I hope you find that amateur tip helpful. I appreciate you folks being around. I really enjoyed the interaction. We'll see you in 91. Take care of yourselves.